for us who are dedicated to the unmanifest field of life, running the world government for the age of enlightenment, gaining proficiency in operating the unmanifest field of consciousness, and from there improving all levels of life. For us, this day devoted to the birth of the Absolute is highly significant. When we say the birth of the Absolute, it's a little paradoxical. The Absolute, unborn, ever unmanifest. Now we talk of the birth of that. In our profession, we are always diving deep into the timeless value. And now we sit together to celebrate the boundaries of time, the birth of the boundless, means trying to locate it in time and place. It's a very significant celebration for us, because then it brings to us to remind us of the real wholeness of which we investigate deep within ourselves, all the time focused deep, and on that unmanifest, unbounded consciousness we operate. For us, this birth of that unmanifest, as if coming out of itself. Birth of the Absolute means as if the Absolute stepping out into something. This is a very significant thing for us, because our purpose of functioning in that state of unity consciousness, our purpose of living enlightenment is to have everything as orderly as the unmanifest Absolute is. Its birth, the value of it to be found in all the areas which are supposed to be not it. Birth of the Absolute, infusion of the Absolute into the relative. Now when we say relative, again it's a very touchy thing in the field of the enlightened family. There is nothing beyond the Absolute, nothing outside of it, but still the concept of birth projects the Absolute into something which is not the Absolute. In the areas where the Absolute is not, it is coming to be born, it is coming to light. This is a significant thing in the family of the enlightened, because the life of the enlightened is that wholeness, oneness, Brahman consciousness, unity consciousness. Living this life, a day comes once a year to remind of all that area of existence, of intelligence, of heart and mind, which is not yet enlightened. So we have to see, we have to celebrate the birth of the Absolute, the emergence of the Absolute into all those varying levels of consciousness where the Absolute is not yet seated. That is the reason why from the platform of the World Government for the Age of Enlightenment we find this day, celebration of this birth of the Absolute, a highly significant event. Krishna's play is for the enlightened. That is the level of consciousness, that's the level of life to which this play belongs. And it belongs for the enlightenment, for the enrichment, for the liveliness of the state of enlightenment, for the liveliness of the unity consciousness or Brahman consciousness. All the song of Krishna is the song of enlightenment, it is speech of the Absolute. And then the celebration is to celebrate the breath of the enlightened first, and from there the influence that radiates in the atmosphere to purify the breath of the unenlightened. The world will always have lots of areas remaining unenlightened and some areas enlightened. A small fraction enlightened, and year after year the celebration of the enlightenment, to think of something which is appearing, to think of the omnipresent appearing. It's a huge awakening in itself. Imagine or experience what happens to the enlightened when he thinks of the huge, enormous, and Brahman in great, the huge, enormous, unbounded, infinite, eternal, absolute, taking birth. His own, the enlightened's own awareness, huge, enormous, and bounded, is found in a concept of appearing, that which is completely unmanifest, now finds itself in the concept of appearing. It's a great stimulation within itself. And it is this that creates waves of the unbounded, infinite eternity, in the unbounded infinite eternity state of awareness. So all the play of Krishna is to stimulate the breath of the enlightened. That's why the book which accounts for the play, Bhagavatam, is the textbook of the enlightened. It's in this that the enlightened rejoice and live and breathe existence. There is nothing of evolvement, no, but there is enlivenment of that homogeneous wholeness which is unbounded and manifest absolute being. It plays within itself without any differences cropping up in the unmanifest differences, in the unmanifest time, in the unmanifest space. It's the concept of eternity taking shape, getting into action, appearing. But as we say, knowledge is different in different states of consciousness. That is that one value of of consciousness, the state of enlightenment, unity consciousness, where this appearance of the Absolute has a great enlivening value, the sense of enlivenment. And then, when a few enlightened people are enlivened in the world, the influence of that enlivenment is enjoyed by all of them. We know to be 1% effect, but 1% is a very crude kind of effect. It takes one out of 100. Here, one in thousands, enlivening his awareness. One day a year, feeling awakened as if all the time that homogeneous wholeness, and suddenly the day comes, birth. It shakes, it enlivens, it creates waves in the ocean of unified awareness. The ocean of unified awareness gets stirred, shaken, and that shake is so good for the whole world, for the whole universe. That is why such a celebration for us who are holding world consciousness to rise is a very, very significant occasion. It's a very great thing for us to have those opportunities, say maybe from time to time. Celebrations are a very dear part of the world government for the age of enlightenment. A very dear part of the age of enlightenment. And such a celebrations which enlivens our own awareness, consciousness, our own existence, who is partaking of the existence of the whole human race. That shaking of our own consciousness, of the birth, Krishna's birth, the absolute, and the story about he was born like that, and he could only have been born in a jail. If the absolute is to be born, he can't be born in freedom, because the moment he was born in the awareness, it was eternal freedom. Now, if that eternal freedom, that embodiment of eternal freedom, if it is to take shape, it gets into the region behind bars. It's a very significant story. But for us, it's significant in awakening, in presenting to us the mechanics of multiplying the influence of enlightenment, multiplying the influence of living this state of enlightenment day after day, month after month, year after year. For us who are living this state of enlightenment, the multiplication of the influence that we radiate is of a very, very great significance. This is the value of this celebration for us. The world government for the age of enlightenment. There is a self-structured mechanics whereby suddenly our awareness is inspired, gets into waves. The absolute gets thrills. And thrills are necessary to multiply the influence that we radiate from our level of consciousness in the whole universe, in the whole creation. It's a very worthwhile significance. Krishna, when we consider on one side the embodiment of all Veda, pure knowledge, the field of all possibilities. On the other side, our own self, in and out of everything. You remember that one verse in Gita where Lord Krishna gives out the mechanics of how he creates. How the Absolute creates, if at all he does. How the enlightened creates. How the Absolute creates. How being assumes the role of becoming without ever becoming. It's a matter of assuming the role without actually going into the activity. What is that verse somewhere in the ninth chapter? one voice. We are talking of birth here. Isolation. Say one, what it is? It's too hidden from hidden in nature, which is my own, I create, isn't it? Say it again, hidden in my own, hidden in nature. Good. That means I am never born. And if I am born, the mechanics is this, that I remain hidden in nature. I remain hidden in my own nature. This is a very, very beautiful formula for us who are raising world consciousness by being more and more. Our domain of activity is consciousness, the field of consciousness, and we gain pure consciousness day after day, many times every day, morning, evening, etc. So what we are doing in this is, we are hiding ourselves. The process is allowing the excitations to settle down, get to the state of least excitation. We are turning within, and in this process is the mechanics of expressing oneself out. For us who are running the world government and are improving the world by going deep within, the mechanics of what we are doing are very beautifully explained in this one expression of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. That remaining within myself, hiding myself. When I want to express myself into the multitudes of creation, infinite variety of creation, what do? I hide myself within my own nature. That means I remain unmanifest, unbounded, infinite, eternal, immortal. I remain that. And in this process, the infinite variety of creation comes out. There is that I go in, and from there everything comes out. It's a very, very significant formula. All that we have been developing in our consciousness, the ability to fulfill our desire. Desire is always for something which is not ourselves. You desire something, you want something, you feel you have the lack of something and you want something. So this is something out of the self. And when we want something out of the self, what we do is we maintain ourselves more carefully, in a conscious manner. We maintain ourselves, and then self-maintained in this process enlivens the self. And when the self is enlivened, the self is that which is omnipresent, and that is why anything in time and space comes to take shape, just by ever maintaining the self. It is this mechanics of how the state of enlightenment performs or acts or behaves, how the state of enlightenment, the state of fulfillment behaves and produces effects outside. The formula is given in this. How I create, by going deep within my own nature, I create. So the significance of such a performance is real only in the family of the enlightened. And it's a very great joy for us to have this family of enlightened. Number of the enlightened people is growing, and when they meet together in the context of a celebration, it's really a great blessing for the whole world.
See you there.